Okay, so Microsoft 365 and banking in Nigeria. Like was said earlier, I am Adekunbi Dayo. At the core, I'm a solution architect and I'm founding partner at Aclio. Aclio Creative Solutions. Aclio is a technology house based here in Lagos, Nigeria. Um, and a lot of what we do would be part of what I'll be talking about in this presentation. So, as mentioned earlier, I have a background in chemical engineering. Um, I started software engineering my first year in university, and ever since then, I've been hooked. I'm also a Microsoft technology evangelist. I play the piano once in a while. I love animals. I have two pets. Um, one is a dog I called Cat, and the other is a cat I called Dog. just to create some confusion there. Okay, so let's just go into the agenda of this presentation. So we're going to be looking at Nigeria in general as a whole. We'll be looking at the banking and fintech terrain in Nigeria, a little bit on Microsoft 365, and then Microsoft 365 in banking and how we have been able to build solutions to help some of the processes in banking and some of our clients here in Lagos, Nigeria. So yeah, Nigeria. Okay, so Nigeria is a West African country, meaning it's in western part of Africa. It's the seventh most populous country in the world and the most populous country in Africa. We have about 520 spoken languages, but English is our official language in Nigeria. We also have three major ethnic groups, which is Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo. I reside in Lagos. Lagos is regarded as like the commercial capital of Nigeria because a lot of commerce goes on in Lagos. But Abuja is the federal capital territory. So Abuja is the official capital of Nigeria. So just so we get a hang of what I'll be talking about, I had to bring up this little infographics to tell you a little bit about Nigeria. On this side, you get to see the population of Nigeria. So the data here is actually from 2019. Currently, it's estimated that there are about 200 million Nigerians. The average age of 18 years. So Nigeria is predominantly a working population. Yeah, so we also looking at the GDP increase as at 2018. The mobile subscription, that's for mobile phones, it's about 172 million. That's about 87% penetration. We have about 112 million internet users, and we have about 24 million social media users. So I'm bringing up all these statistics to serve as a build up to explaining the banking industry and the financial industry in Nigeria. So when I am talking about some of the solutions, you will understand exactly where um, I'm coming from. So having all this in mind, um, let's go into banking in Nigeria. So currently in Nigeria, there currently in Nigeria we have 22 commercial banks. So these are the banks that have the CBN license. CBN is Central Bank of Nigeria. That has the CBN license to do commercial banking, and there are 22 of them. There used to be more than this, but there was a reform some 10 years ago that made a lot of banks, a lot of commercial banks to consolidate. So the number actually shrunk to 22. So as of today, there are about 22 commercial banks, apart from the ones that are just getting licenses and about to start operations. We also have microfinance banks. The microfinance banks, we have about 920 microfinance banks in Nigeria. I'm sure you'll be wondering why there are more microfinance banks in Nigeria. So one of the major issues about banking in Nigeria is, like I showed you, internet penetration and literacy. So there are about 60 million unbanked Nigerians, like you can see over here. There are about 60 million unbanked Nigerians, and the CBN has been looking for a way to um, close this gap. Like I said, one of the major issues that um, make up this high number of unbanked Nigeria level and the internet penetration, especially up north Nigeria, where it seems to be lesser literacy level. So a lot of banks have started looking for ways to bridge this gap, and they've been coming up with things like agency banking, and also the microfinance banks are helping because they are like grassroots banks that can actually go to these people and speak the language that these people understand, and even convince them to, put their money in banks, because most of them still don't particularly trust the banking system. But that being said, it doesn't mean that the banking industry in Nigeria is not huge. It is actually very, very huge. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you for free that the banking industry in Nigeria is like one of the fast-paced industry, apart from the oil and gas industry. And they are like the early adopters of technology. So the banking and finance industry in Nigeria embraces technology more than any other, and we have a couple of clients across many sectors, even in the oil and gas and agricultural sector. So yes, banking is really, really huge in Nigeria. As at 2019, there was about 100 billion transactions, interbank transactions alone. So interbank transactions alone, meaning transactions from one bank to another. So in the volume, there are about 100 billion transactions, and those transactions totaled into about 442 trillion. And like I said, that's just interbank transactions alone. Check transactions were at about 4 trillion. ATM transactions were about 6 trillion, sorry. POS transactions, internet transactions, and so on. So you see that banking is actually really huge in Nigeria, and for an industry this huge, it's only logical that they would constantly be looking for ways to make their business processes really, really seamless. Okay, and that's what will bring us into Microsoft 365 and how we have been leveraging the solutions in Microsoft 365 to help the banking processes. So I'm sure a number of us already know what Microsoft 365 is. If anybody does not have a clear understanding of what Microsoft 365 is yet, I would like to address it, otherwise we can just go on. Anyone?
No, we're good.
Okay. Okay, so essentially Microsoft 365, so initially it used to be just Office 365, and they had a couple of productivity tools, but sometime a couple of years back, they made the whole suite into Microsoft 365 because they added the EMS and a couple other things with the Windows 10. So essentially, it's a complete, intelligent, secure solution for the modern workplace. And Microsoft, the people at Microsoft usually address these four pillars of the value proposition of the Microsoft 365. And essentially, those four pillars are creativity, teamwork, simplicity, and of course, security. And as much as I have seen, I would say that they are they've really been true to their word, because um, it's when you look at the solutions that come with the Microsoft 365, the possibilities are really endless. So it's your at the end of the day, it's your creativity that determines how far and how well you can use these solutions. So essentially, Microsoft are the heart of digital transformation. It borders around these four things: customer engagement, employee empowerment, process or operation optimization, and product transformation. For the purpose of this presentation, I'll be focusing on process or operations optimization, employee empowerment.
Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
Good.
Sorry.
Okay. And yeah, so that's what I would essentially be focusing on here. I would be looking at these tools, although the Microsoft 365 is not limited to these tools, but it would be too much of a stretch if I decide to go over each and every one of the productivity tools on the M365. But the most important ones with the very interesting case studies are the ones that I have picked out here, and subsequently we'll be discussing the case studies and how we have been able to use some of these solutions and even combine them, you know, to make some business processes in some of our banking, some of our clients that are obviously our banks, make their processes seamless. So first on the list is SharePoint. Yeah, we also have the Microsoft Office. I'm sure everybody knows Microsoft Office and the packages that they offer and the applications that are there, Excel, PowerPoint. I'm sure everybody has had to use that one time or the other, even if this particular presentation was made on PowerPoint. So there's also the Power Apps and Flow, essentially for workflows and automation. We have Power BI for business intelligence and data visualization. We've also done some interesting things around Microsoft Stream for video streaming, and Teams for collaboration and communication. So I'll be focusing majorly on SharePoint, Power Apps, and Power BI, and I'll also touch on Stream too. So I would be taking each of these technologies one after the other, and I'll be discussing the case studies or the use case in some of the banks that we have worked with in Nigeria. Okay, so essentially SharePoint, for those of us that are not conversant with SharePoint, SharePoint is one of the Microsoft 365 tools where intelligent collaboration and automation happens. I'll break it down. So essentially, it's a secure place to create team and project sites, to store and organize documents, to build business process automation around those assets like the team and project sites, the documents that we are putting on there. It also enables sharing and access to information from almost any device. You know. So the first use case, so the first use case here is the application directory. So in one of the banks we worked with, you realize that over the years there are a lot of applications that are deployed at the banks for different or various purposes. And at the end of the day, keeping track of all the applications and where they reside and their URLs can be a little bit difficult. So we created something we called an application directory for this particular client. So essentially what the application directory is a directory of all the applications with brief descriptions of what the applications do and a link to the application. And this sits on their SharePoint portal. So on this SharePoint portal, all they need to do is to just go onto the SharePoint portal and then click on the application directory, and they see a list of all these applications there, and they can click on whichever one that they want to go to. Another use case was for a knowledge base, especially for IT service desk. So day in, day out, IT service desk always gets like certain support requests on certain things. Some are issues that they've tackled before, others are new issues, and some take more time than others. So the organization, in order to like, so there are scenarios where certain issues have been tackled by someone before, but the person might not necessarily be around to handle this issue again. So they decided to create some sort of knowledge base where lessons learned during, say, for example, a particular deployment can go on there, and then subsequent users can go there to see exactly how to go about solving certain issues. Another very interesting use case was for document management. So remember I mentioned that about 60 million Nigerians are still unbanked. So in order to bank the unbanked in Nigeria, one of our clients came up with an agency banking platform. So the agency banking platform, what it does is it creates for the unbanked. Most of these guys are uneducated, and they don't have the necessary documents that is required for them to open a bank account. So there's a certain type of account that they call the tier 1 account. I don't know if anybody is conversant with that. But a tier 1 account is an account that needs little or no documentation. But there is a limitation on the amount of transaction that you can carry out on that type of account until you provide the necessary documentation. So that's what we call a tier 1 account in Nigeria. So in order to bank the unbanked, this particular client came up with an agency banking platform where they use a POS to essentially open an account for someone. So one of the requirements is that they have to fill certain documents, because sometimes the areas where they go to register these people have very low internet penetration. So doing it over the internet can be a little bit hectic. So they actually do this and fill certain forms. Now, when they fill the forms with the agents will now eventually take the forms back to the bank, and instead of having to type in the details on the form onto their core banking application, we came up with this solution. So there is a solution called Abby. I don't know if anybody has heard of Abby before. Abby Fine Reader. Abby Fine Reader is an OCR application, optical character recognition. So what they do is they just scan these documents to PDF. When it is scanned to PDF, when it is scanned, the scanner drops it on a particular folder that we call a hot folder. So depending on the class of the document, there are several documents. I'm just using the agency banking document now as an example. Abby picks it up. When Abby picks it up, Abby does the OCR on the document. And when the OCR is done on the document, it takes the details, it extracts the details from the form and takes it into SharePoint. The moment it is taken into SharePoint, a workflow is triggered. When the workflow is triggered, the required actors on each of the workflows will get notified, and they can carry on the workflow until eventually that account is provisioned on the core banking application of that particular bank. So that was what we're able to do around integrating the ABI Fine Reader with SharePoint. Another very interesting use case for SharePoint was the vendor purchase order and service entry management. So these banks would naturally have vendors for different services or products. Most of the time, purchase orders are raised and service entries are raised for this vendor, but the bank started realizing that there were lapses between the service or the product getting delivered and paying the vendor. So a lot of vendors started complaining that their payments were not getting to them early. And this was not because the bank was not ready to pay. It was actually because there were some lapses in the business process. It was either some form was sitting on somebody's table and the person was too occupied to actually take a look at the form and then take it to the next table. The process was just too manual. So what we did was to build a SharePoint workflow around this to make everything very seamless. The vendors can go on there and upload their service entry. Purchase orders are uploaded there, and the vendors will be notified. So everything just became really automated, and this particular SharePoint workflow was also integrated into Power BI just so we can have like a data visualization into exactly what is going on, where the bottlenecks are, you know, at for PO and SC approvals. And when I'm talking about Power BI, I'll bring up how we integrated Power BI into this particular solution. But the interesting thing is, a couple of months after this solution was deployed, there was a drastic decline in the amount of vendors that were owed and even the time duration between approvals, because an SLA was also built into this, a maximum time a particular approval can sit on someone's table before before the person approves it. So essentially, if it is on your table for more than 24 hours, you keep on getting reminders until you act on it. If after 24 hours you don't act on it, it will go ahead and send a mail to your superior, you know, and stuff like that. So these are like some of the solutions that we've built around SharePoint to make some of the internal processes at the banks seamless. So Power BI now. So on Power BI, remember I mentioned the vendor PO and SC management. So here is where we integrated Power BI to have like proper insights into exactly what is going on. The next slide is one of the dashboards. I had to blow out some of the vendor names just for, I mean, just to protect their name, yeah? So this is what the dashboard looks like. There were a lot more metrics that we, or a lot more charts that we built out of that, but I just did a screenshot of this one so we can just quickly go through. So like I said, a couple of weeks after the solution was deployed, you can see that there was a decline from what vendors were owed from about 4.8 million to less than a million in just 3 weeks, because people were now aware that there was a dashboard, and if you are lagging behind, you also get to see it on the dashboard. You get notifications, you get reminders. So we found out that a lot more service entries were being approved. Things were no longer sitting on people's table for so long. And yeah, so even down to approval pending approval by aging, you see the number of days, and if your name is there, of course, you know that you need to act on this. So this is like just one of the many things we've done with Power BI, but I just thought this would be a good example to show how Power BI can be leveraged for internal processes. The next one is the Microsoft Stream. So just imagine having your own organizational level YouTube, okay? So essentially, you can upload and categorize your videos up on Microsoft Stream. So for this particular institution, a lot of their onboarding videos were put on there. And I also mentioned the knowledge base. So most times, knowledge bases would require videos. So those videos can automatically just be on stream, and people can just go on there and watch the videos, be it a learning center or a knowledge-based video, or I mean the use cases are for this kind of things are really unlimited. It all depends on, like I said earlier, how creative you can get with combining all these solutions together. The last one I'm talking about is the Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, and this is definitely not the least. So combining this with Microsoft Forms, by the way, the SharePoint solution that I talked about too, one of the, so Microsoft Forms, the Microsoft Forms is also built into SharePoint, and that's what you use to share the SharePoint online, and that's essentially what you use to build forms that will take what would rather be a paperwork, and then you can use those forms to take data from users and then create automations around whatever submission users are submitting. So Power Apps essentially is a no-code approach to building applications. So with a couple of drag and drop and if statements, you can build a seemingly no-code application for. Okay, sorry, I was hearing myself. So you can build a no-code application for some of your internal business processes. And one of the, or some of the things that we've built around this, the Power Virtual Agent. So this is like some sort of chatbot. Though at the moment it's still used internally, but the bank has plans to blow it up and even open it up to their customers. So one of the things we're able to do with this is to automate certain things that usually would go to the service desk and somebody will have to work on it. So say for example, you request a static IP for, you are requesting a static IP maybe for a server or for your system or some very mundane tasks. So essentially for this particular Power Virtual Agent thing, we were able to do, some sort of IP address, static IP address request, where you just go and you chat with some sort of chat bot. So this was integrated with the Microsoft Bot framework, and then you can automatically be assigned an IP without human intervention. So that takes a lot away from whoever is sitting at the service desk and has to would rather, you know, have to go into the system and do this task, you know, for you ordinarily. Apart from that, internal support, we use it to send internal support, to raise internal support cases. So you just build a form with Microsoft Forms and automate how the flow works, who gets a notification when a request for support has been raised. Right before the whole COVID thing in Nigeria, to when people were still working from their offices, we also built a meeting room booking application where you can go on there and see, because most of the time vendors or clients are invited to the bank for a meeting, and then they realize that all the meeting rooms are filled up and they start looking for where to, you know, carry out their meeting. So essentially we just built a meeting room reservation system, still on Power Apps, and this was done. These are applications that you can build in as little as a few hours or one day at most, you know, with no code. You don't have to build an application from scratch. You just have to drag and drop a couple of things here and there, and then you have your solution. So this helps them better manage their meeting spaces, and the whole waiting for people to conclude meeting and the bottlenecks around that was like totally eradicated. So these are just some of the use cases on some of the applications that you have on the Microsoft 365 platform. There are a lot more, and like I said, it all boils down to how creative you are to mix and match and use all these wonderful applications together. So it will be almost impossible for us to touch base on every single thing and how it works. But I feel these use cases that are brought up would, I mean, if there are things we've not started using, we open our eyes more to all the things that we can achieve with Microsoft 365 in our organizations. And like I said, there's still so much more. It doesn't end at that. There's the enterprise mobility suite. I mean, we can't talk about all these things without talking about security too. There's a whole lot going on security aspect of all these things that I've mentioned. I mean, if it is not secure, they will be using it in places like banks. So there's a lot more going on the security end. I might not be able to go into the nitty-gritty or the details of all of that, but I would share my details at the end of this presentation. And if you'd like to know a lot more about that, you can hit me up and then we can talk about that. There's the Microsoft 365 Planner, you have the forms, you have the OneDrive, and trust me, there's a lot that can go on in OneDrive. There are a lot of solutions that were built around OneDrive too. Even the document management solution that I mentioned earlier, there's a part of it too that runs off OneDrive. For the sake of brevity, I just summarized the SharePoint and the Power BI, the SharePoint and the ABI OCR part. So there's a lot more that we can achieve with this, and I'm still learning myself too, because it's really big, and if anyone in this presentation has like more ideas or have leveraged any of these platforms in a way that you think would be eye-opening for anyone here, it will also be a very good idea to share. But yeah, in a nutshell, this is essentially Microsoft 365 and how we have been trying to use it. I narrowed down a lot of the use cases to banking use cases, but it doesn't end there. So one of the really nice things that we are doing for one of our clients, which is like an insurance company, is claims for your car insurance. So we built some sort of chatbot that users can chat with to make like insurance claims for vehicles. So yeah, it's the use cases are just as little or as much as your imagination, can go. And like I said, I'm open to also hearing from anyone from the team on if they have been using the Microsoft 365, to share their experiences and how they've gone about using the platform. So yeah, I try to keep it really short with just about 19 slides. I hope I didn't bore you out there, but yeah, those are my details on the screen. Feel free to send me a mail or call me, and I'll be happy to hear your experiences, answer your questions, or deliberate on some of these things that we have talked about. Thank you very much for having me. I hope we have picked one or two things from this brief presentation of mine.
Thank you, Deo. That was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful presentation. Those are probably the best PowerPoint slides I've ever seen. My goodness. Give me a copy of that so I can put my own content on it. Oh my goodness. That is some tight graphics you got there. And can you keep your contact information screen up so everybody can see that as well?
Yeah.
Just in case they didn't catch that. And by the way, your English is spot on. I mean, it's no wonder a lot of companies are tapping Lagos and Nigeria to do a lot of IT work. You guys have awesome English, and you know, your technical skills just, you know, are untouchable. I mean, I could tell. We've got a couple Lagos presenters in the pipeline, and they're just rocket scientists. I don't know what the schools are teaching you over there or what you eating, but you guys are good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Is there anybody in the audience that would have questions for Deo?
Yeah, this is Ben. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Deo, for the presentation. At least one of my takeaways is that you've opened my eyes rather to some of the opportunities that are available out there. My aspiration so far has been to learn everything that I can learn in the Microsoft 365 Power Platform environment so that I can go into business. Basically, one of the things that I try to do is whenever I'm on this kind of presentation sites, I'd like to see if there's somebody out there who has certain skills that maybe sometime in the future, maybe I can tap on, if there's any way we can collaborate on a project and, you know, work out things like that. But coming back to your presentation, when you identify maybe a bank, a client, do you necessarily go in and do a whole presentation about what they may use, or do you just leverage on what it is that they want, and then from there you can maybe plan out on what else you can offer them? I mean, for me, that is part of the challenging aspect of sales, of which I'm not a good salesman, but I'm just trying to figure out, you know, what challenges do you see when you're onboarding a client for a project like some of what you presented, and how do you go about basically expounding on that to be able to kind of broaden your relationship with them?
Okay, so I get your question perfectly well, and yeah, it can be an issue sometimes. But so what we try to do is we first listen to your problem. Most organizations say,
Hey, are you still there, Deo?
for example, we want, so can you hear me?
Okay, we kind of missed you there for a minute.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, like as I was saying, beyond all the things that I've shown you here, actually is also a software development house. So we essentially build bespoke software applications for most of our clients too. So they usually will come to us and say, we need you guys to build this application for us, but we always try to tackle it from what the problem might be. Okay, so we want to
Mm-hmm.
know. So, for example, the vendor PO and SC approval workflow that we built on SharePoint. When the client approached us, they actually told us that they wanted us to build a solution, a bespoke solution for them to help them manage that. Okay. And then
Okay.
we looked at the problem, and then we did some sort of site audit. And we found out that they already had Microsoft 365 and they were paying licenses for it, you know. And we told them, in order for you guys to get like maximum ROI on your M365 investment, would advise and recommend that you build this on SharePoint for a couple of reasons. All your users are already integrated into SharePoint. They're already paying for the SharePoint licenses anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it will be easier for us to build, and time to live will be really, really short, because a lot of the things we'll be building, SharePoint would have already handled that for us if we were to build from scratch, you know. So, so that's like one way we tackle it. We try to listen to the problem first. Then we do a site audit to know what they have, what is existing, and then we now look for we look for the easiest way to build a solution, you know, that would work for them, instead of trying to just duplicate solutions here and there. Because another issue like most of the banks have in Nigeria is that they have about 4 or 5 solutions that are doing almost the same thing, and maybe just one thing different from each other, and all those things would have been consolidated into one particular application if they had thought it out properly, or if vendors have done like a proper site audit to know exactly the solutions that they have on ground.
Oh crap,
So,
I missed it. Man.
Who's that?
Did he answer your question, Ben?
Yes, it did. Thank you, Dale.
okay.
Mm.
Hey, Dale, thank you for the presentation. It was very concise and very good information. I have a question now. When reaching out to clients in Africa, especially me, for example, in Ivory Coast, some of the concerns that I get from them, or some of the feedback I get, is they're talking about connectivity, internet connectivity, and therefore they are kind of reluctant to go into the cloud. So, anything SharePoint or, AWS, Azure, and so on. Like, how do you counter that? Or how do you respond to it?
Okay, so really, so first things first is a lot of them have this bias towards the cloud. The Africans have this mentality of like they want to see where their server sits, and they also want to be able to get a hold of their server. If there's anything wrong, they can actually go there and do whatever they need to do by themselves. But for there are pros and there are cons for everything, really. And if the pros can outweigh the cons, I mean, if you can outweigh whatever they seem to be the con to them. So one of the example now would be I'm going to use one of our clients as an example. So they were on Microsoft Office for a while. One of the issues they were having was managing the licenses. For them to install licenses on a license as small as Microsoft Office, for them to install the licenses, they probably would have to push it through group policy, or they will have to install the licenses on the individual devices one after the other. And keeping track of licensing was a serious headache, you know, for them. One of the things that we told them was, if you were on Microsoft 365, you wouldn't really need to, you know, bother about this, because managing your licensing on there, it's pretty easy. You know, it's on a user basis. You can, whatever device you are, whatever you device you are logging on with your license, your account, you know, you can actually get on there. For the Azure one, we also tell them, you know, with the rate at which technology is moving, you don't want to be managing servers yourself. When you look at it in the long run, you find out that you're spending more, especially for organizations as large as banks. You know, you are spending more having to host those applications, you know, yourself. And there's like a lot more built into all these solutions that we talk about now. You also don't need to bother about upgrades, because the upgrade is you always get the latest version of whatever is obtainable. Like I said, I didn't touch on the security part of it, but it's very, very secure. Most likely more secure than what you can do for yourself on premise, you know. So yeah, so those are the angles that we come from. And really, these organizations, they want to see a very high level of cost savings. So if you can break it down to them and they can see that they'll actually be saving more cost in the long run by going to the cloud, then
So